Most businesses don't have a PR problem, they have an invisibility problem. And if I was starting a PR strategy from scratch in 2026, here are the exact 6 steps I'd follow to fix that. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the exact PR playbook that we use with our clients at AutoPR. These are the same 6 steps whether you're an e-commerce brand, a tech company, a law firm, or a personal brand. Doesn't matter. The framework works the same. And by the end of this, you're going to know exactly how journalists decide what to cover, how to find the right ones for your industry, how to pitch them, and how to turn that coverage into long-term authority for your business. Let's get into it. Authority positioning. Before you pitch a single journalist, before you send a single email, you need to answer one question. What are you the authority on? Because if you can't answer that clearly, no journalist is going to answer it for you. And I know that sounds obvious, but you'd be surprised how many business owners skip this step. They jump straight into trying to get press without ever defining what they want to be known for. They show up and say, "We're a great company with a great product." Cool. That's not a story. That's a LinkedIn bio. Journalists don't cover companies, they cover experts with a point of view. So what does authority positioning actually mean? It means getting specific about what topics you can speak on with real credibility. What's your expertise? What's your perspective that's different from everyone else in your space? If a reporter Googled you right now, what will they find? And does it tell a clear, consistent story about who you are and what you stand for? Because here's the thing, your authority positioning becomes the foundation for everything else in this playbook. Your story angle, your pitch, the outlets you target, all of it flows from this first step. If this isn't clear, nothing downstream is going to work the way it should. I'll give you a real example. We worked with a company in the public adjusting space. They help homeowners fight back against insurance companies when they're getting underpaid or denied on claims. The founder, Theodore, had built something nobody else had done before. He was the first person to ever franchise in this category. He had grown from 3 territories to over 36 in about 6 months. He'd already gotten some early press, Dallas Morning News, New York Times, but none of it was tied to a deliberate authority position. The coverage was scattered. There was no clear narrative connecting it. Once we locked in the positioning, first a franchise in the space, a consumer advocate, national expansion leader in an industry where homeowners are getting ripped off by insurance companies posting record profits, now everything had a foundation. Every pitch, every angle, every outlet we targeted could build on that same story. That's what authority positioning does. It turns random press into a strategy. Story angle. The number one mistake I see business owners make with PR is they go straight to a journalist and basically say, "Hey, my company's really cool, you should write about it." And then they wonder why nobody responds. That's not how it works. Journalists don't write about companies. They write stories. And if you don't give them a story, they're not going to make one up for you. Think about it from the journalist side for a second. They have an editor, they have to walk into a room and say, "I want to write about this." If all you gave them is, "This company has a good product," that's a dead pitch. But if you give them, "This guy lost $100 million, rebuilt from scratch, and here's what he learned about risk management during a market downturn," that's a story an editor says yes to. See the difference? The angles that consistently work are usually one of a few things. You have a take on something happening in the news right now, you have data or a result that surprises people, you did something nobody else in your industry has done, or you have a real story with a real turning point that people can learn from. Most businesses are sitting on 3 or 4 great story angles right now and they just haven't pulled them out yet. That's what this step is about. So let me show you what this looks like in practice. We worked with a client named James Cordier in the financial space. He went through a very public $100 million loss. A lot of people would look at that and think PR is the last thing you'd want. But the story angles we built around him were things like, "What I learned from a $100 million loss," and "A safer strategy for income in a volatile market." Those aren't pitches about James Cordier, the person. Those are stories that tap into what journalists are already writing about: market uncertainty, retirement risk, where to put your money when everything feels unstable. The angle matched what editors were already looking for. That's what made it work. You're not asking a journalist to do you a favor. You're giving them something their audience already wants to read. Journalist research. So you've got your positioning and you've got your story angle. Now the question is, who do you actually send it to? Because if you're blasting your pitch to every journalist you can find, you're wasting your time. Most of those people don't even cover your industry. Not every outlet matters for your business, and even within the right outlet, not every journalist is the right journalist. A Forbes writer who covers tech startups is a completely different person than a Forbes writer who covers healthcare. Same publication, completely different beat. If you pitch the wrong one, it doesn't matter how good your angle is. It's going to get ignored. So the research process is actually pretty straightforward. You want to look at who is writing about your industry right now, not who wrote about it 2 years ago. Who published something in the last 30 to 60 days? Those are the journalists who are actively covering your space and actively need sources. The other thing to think about is where your audience is actually reading. For some businesses, that's Forbes and Bloomberg. For others, it's a niche trade publication that every decision maker in their industry reads cover to cover. A placement in the right niche outlet can honestly do more for your business than a placement in a bigger outlet that your audience doesn't pay attention to. It depends on your goals. Start with a list of 10 to 15 journalists who are actively covering your space at outlets that actually matter for your business. That's your hit list. Quality over volume every single time. And to show you what this looks like when it's done right, let me tell you about Eclipse Cottages. Justin Draplin built this really cool alternative housing product focused on sustainability, safety, and home technology. When our team started working with him, we didn't just blast pitches to every publication out there. We targeted journalists who are already writing about alternative housing, modular homes, sustainable living, the people who actually covered that beat. The result was 448 pieces of coverage, 2.5 billion in audience exposure, and over 10 million estimated views. They got a massive feature in Business Insider, not because we pitched everyone under the sun, but because we had relationships with the right journalists covering that space and matched the story to what they were already writing about. Justin was getting so many phone calls from the coverage that he actually stopped answering his phone because he was overwhelmed. That's what happens when you target the right people with the right story. Pitch strategy. Alright, so you know what you're the authority on. You've got your story angle, you know which journalists to go after, now you actually have to write the pitch, and this is where most people completely overthink it. A pitch is not a press release, it's not your company bio, it's not a 3-paragraph email about how great your product is. A pitch is a short, clear message that tells a journalist why their audience would care about this story right now. That's it. Keep it short. Journalists get hundreds of emails a day, some get thousands. If your pitch doesn't communicate the story in the first few lines, it's getting deleted. You're not writing an essay, you're writing something that a busy person can scan in 15 seconds and think, I can use this. The structure is simple. Lead with the angle, not with yourself. What's the story? Why does it matter right now? Then you briefly establish why you're the right person to tell it. That's your credibility, 1 or 2 sentences max. Then make it easy for them to say yes. Are you available for an interview? Can you write a guest piece? Do you have data you can share? Remove the friction. The biggest mistake is making the pitch about you instead of about their audience. Every journalist is thinking one thing when they open your email. Will my readers care about this? If your pitch answers that question in the first 2 lines, you're ahead of 90% of the emails sitting in their inbox. Going back to James Cordier, because this is a perfect example of how the pitch brings it all together. Our team didn't pitch editors with, James Cordier is a financial expert who wants media coverage. That would have been dead on arrival. Instead, the pitch led with, what I learned from a $100 million loss. That's a headline an editor can immediately see working for their audience. The person came second as the credible source behind the story. Our media director, Ryan Bass, who's also a national correspondent at NewsNation, put it this way. As a journalist himself, the pitches that stand out in his inbox are the ones where he can immediately see the value for his audience and then go verify the person's expertise through existing materials. Short, clear, story first. That's the formula. Pitch execution. So now you've got the pitch written. Great, but here's the thing most people don't realize. One pitch is not a strategy. One email to one journalist is not PR. The businesses that actually get consistent coverage are the ones that treat this like a system, not a one-time Hail Mary. Most business owners send 1 or 2 emails, don't hear back, and decide PR doesn't work. That's not a failed strategy. That's not having a strategy at all. Journalists are busy. They miss emails. The timing might not be right. That doesn't mean the pitch was bad. It means you need to keep going. Follow-up matters. Not annoying, desperate follow-up. Professional, brief follow-up that reminds the journalist you exist and that your story is still relevant. A lot of placements come from the second or third touch point, not the first one. That's just a reality of how it works. You need to be pitching consistently, not once a quarter when you feel like it, weekly. You're building a pipeline, not buying a lottery ticket. Some pitches land in a week, some take months. But if you're only sending 1 pitch a month, you don't have a pipeline, you have a hope. And here's the part that people don't talk about enough. This is also where relationships start to form. When a journalist sees your name consistently, with good angles, relevant to their beat, you go from random person in my inbox to reliable source I can call when I need an expert. That shift is everything. That's when PR starts working on autopilot. Let me give you a real example of what consistent execution actually produces. We worked with a client named Steve Davis, who teaches people how to build wealth through real estate. Steve was with us for about 1.5 years, and the reason his campaign was so successful is that he was willing to show up for every single opportunity. He said yes to everything. Small podcasts, big features, guest articles, interviews, all of it. Our team pitched aggressively, and Steve matched that energy by being available and ready to go whenever something came through. Over the course of that campaign, he got approved for Forbes Business Council, had multiple co-authored bylines in Forbes, got featured as a key source on a News Nation segment about interest rates and the housing market, landed on the Action and Ambition podcast, and appeared on another podcast called Saving with Steve Sexton. That single podcast appearance generated about 250 sign-ups to his course, which alone more than paid for everything he'd invested in PR over the entire 1.5 years. Steve actually paused at one point to try other marketing efforts, and he came back because nothing else compounded the same way. That's what consistent execution does. It's not one big swing, it's showing up week after week until the momentum is doing the work for you. Authority Flywheel. Here's what nobody tells you about PR. The first placement is the hardest, the second one is easier, and by the time you've got 5 or 6 pieces of coverage out there, journalists start coming to you. That's the flywheel. Think about it. Every piece of coverage you get makes the next one easier to land. When a journalist is deciding whether to feature you, the first thing they do is Google you. If they find a Forbes article, a podcast appearance, and a USA Today feature, it just went from who's this person to this person is clearly credible. That changes the entire dynamic. You're no longer cold pitching, you're showing up with proof. This is what we call the authority flywheel. Visibility leads to credibility, credibility leads to trust, trust leads to revenue, and revenue gives you more stories to tell, which feeds more visibility, and it's a loop that accelerates the longer you stay in it. The businesses that get the most out of PR are the ones that don't stop after the first win. They keep the machine running, they keep pitching, they keep saying yes to opportunities, and over time the inbound starts. Journalists reach out to you. Podcasts invite you on. Speaking opportunities show up that you never applied for. That doesn't happen from one placement. It happens from staying consistent long enough for the flywheel to kick in. The other thing that compounds is SEO. Every article with your name in a top-tier outlet is a high domain authority backlink pointing back to you. Over time, when someone Googles your name or your company, the first page isn't just your website anymore. It's Forbes, Entrepreneur, USA Today, CNN. That is a level of trust that no ad can buy. You can't run a Facebook campaign that puts you on the first page of Google next to Forbes. PR does that. And to bring this full circle, let me tell you about Jung and Embark advisors. Jay runs an M&A and capital raising firm. He had experience at Goldman Sachs, which gave us a strong foundation to work with. Over the course of his campaign, our team generated 717 pieces of coverage with over 10 million estimated views. Business Insider, Bloomberg, and a long list of top-tier placements. The real story isn't the volume, it's how the flywheel kicked in. Early placements built the credibility that opened the door to bigger outlets. Bigger outlets made Jay a go-to source for financial commentary, and being a go-to source meant journalists were reaching out to him instead of the other way around. At a certain point, the momentum was doing a lot of the heavy lifting. That's the flywheel in action, and that's what you're building toward when you commit to this process. So that's the full playbook, 6 steps. If you're a business owner and you've been thinking about PR but didn't know where to start, now you do. And if you want help actually executing this, the pitching, the journalist outreach, the story creation, all of it done for you, that's what we do at Otto PR. We're a 2-time Inc. 5000 firm, #1 rated on G2 and Clutch, and we guarantee media placements every single month. If you want to talk about what a PR strategy would look like for your specific business, there's a link below to book a call with our team. We'll look at your brand, tell you which outlets made sense, and map out a plan. But whether you work with us or not, here's what I want you to take away from this. PR is not as complicated as people make it. You figure out what you're the authority on, you find the story angle that journalists actually care about, you target the right people, you pitch them the right way, and you stay consistent. That's it. That's the whole game. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.